Germany, November 1945. In Nuremberg, final preparations are underway for the International Military Tribunal, the Nuremberg trials at which many of Nazi Germany's most sordid secrets will be exposed. Meanwhile, 125 miles to the west in Stuttgart, Allied forces entering the ruined Daimler-Benz works are about to discover a secret pre-war German plan for world domination of a quite different kind. By the early 1930s, huge crowds across Europe regularly thrilled to the exploits of brave drivers as they competed in Grand Prix motor racing. Victory brought glory to drivers and their countries in equal measure, and the automotive marques involved, including Bugatti, Maserati and Alfa Romeo, became synonyms for national engineering excellence. Seeing an opportunity to glorify the Third Reich, in 1934 the German government offered Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union generous subsidies to develop Grand Prix cars using cutting-edge technologies. Between them, Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union won all but 3 of the Grand Prix between 1935 and 1939, and made national heroes of their young drivers, including Bernd Rosemeyer and Hans Stuck. The teams also set German national and one-way speed records of well over 200 miles per hour on special closed sections of the newly created autobahns. But by the mid-1930s, the world land speed record was already over 300 miles per hour, beyond the reach of even the famed Silver Arrows. Hans Stuck had won many races for Auto Union, and he could see an opportunity for Germany to score a significant propaganda victory by claiming the world land speed record, which at that time was dominated by the British. When Auto Union showed no interest, in August 1936 he sent a telegram to the chairman of Daimler-Benz, Wilhelm Kissel. Additionally, using his political connections, he took his proposal straight to the top. With funding agreed by Adolf Hitler himself, Mercedes-Benz would develop a car specifically to break the record, to a design straight from the drawing board of Dr. Ferdinand Porsche. On January 13, 1937, the official order was issued, and the secret Mercedes-Benz Type 80 project was born. At the inception of the T80 project in 1936, the land speed record stood at 301 miles per hour. Sir Malcolm Campbell had driven the final iteration of Bluebird, powered by the 36.7-litre V12 Rolls-Royce racing engine developed for the Schneider Trophy air races. Dr. Porsche's new design would target 342 miles per hour and would also look to an aircraft power plant. Daimler-Benz were heavily involved in the German rearmament program, and with the blessing of the Reich's Minister of Aircraft Procurement, it was agreed that a DB601 aircraft engine, as used in the Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt fighters, would be made available. Although the power of the 33.9-litre V12 was around half that demanded by Dr. Porsche's calculations, an uprated version of the engine intended for flying record attempts developed more than 2,700 horsepower and was swiftly requisitioned for the project. Over the next 2 years, as the T80 project progressed in secret, British drivers George Easton and John Cobb continued to raise the land speed record as they competed with each other at Bonneville. First blood went to Easton in the monstrous 7-ton Thunderbolt, powered by 2 of the V12 Rolls-Royce engines used by Campbell in Bluebird. By the end of 1937, Easton had increased the record to 345 miles per hour, already beyond the design speed of the Mercedes-Benz T80. Then, in September 1938, the record was raised twice more, first by John Cobb in the twin-engined Railton Special, and then by Easton in a heavily revised version of Thunderbolt. You can find the full stories of these cars and their drivers on the Scarf and Goggles YouTube channel. With the record now standing at 357.5 miles per hour, friends Easton and Cobb returned home, unaware that their efforts had given the engineers building the T80 a serious headache. The car Hitler had nicknamed Blackbird was in danger of obsolescence before it had turned a wheel. Fortunately, Daimler-Benz had a prototype engine in development which might offer a solution. The DB603 was a monster of an engine. Physically similar in size to the DB601 and running on an exotic cocktail of volatile fuels, In theory, the new supercharged V12 engine could develop 3,500 horsepower from its 44.5 litres. This, Dr. Porsche calculated, should enable the T80 to not only break the world land speed record, but also to raise it above 400 miles per hour. With Berlin's approval, the prototype DB603 was installed in the car's chassis. The T80's mechanical design was a work of art. The car's unusual layout featured 3 axles, with 2 pairs of wheels at the rear driven via a torque converter instead of a more traditional gearbox. The huge DB603 power plant was mounted in the centre of the tube frame chassis, where its inverted arrangement aided the car's aerodynamics and low centre of gravity. A tiny cockpit was placed immediately in front of the engine, just behind the front wheels. Further features included glycol cooling, typical of aircraft design at the time, 6-wheel hydraulic brakes, and an ingenious mechanical anti-wheel spin system, which reduced the engine's power if sensors detected that the rear wheels were spinning faster than the fronts. Hiding all of this cutting-edge pre-war technology was a curvaceous steel body built by aircraft manufacturer Heinkel. Highly sculpted wheel arches dominated the front and rear of the bodywork, with the rear arches extending back to form 2 long fins to aid stability at speed. Whilst the top surface of the car was designed to create a degree of downforce, winglets on each side of the car were intended to prevent the futuristic vehicle taking off. With the exception of the cockpit canopy, the body was formed as a single piece and fixed to the chassis at just 8 points, using quick-release fasteners to allow easy removal for maintenance. Overall, the T80 boasted a drag coefficient of just 0.18, very low even by today's standards, and stood 26 feet 8 inches long, 5 feet 9 inches wide, and 4 feet 1 inch high. Although the prospect of running the car at Bonneville in the USA had been considered, the propaganda opportunity offered by a German driver and car raising the record in Germany could not be ignored, and a special section of the country's new autobahn network between Dessau and Bitterfeld was prepared for the record attempt. By paving over the median between the carriageways and building special bridges, a track 25 metres wide was created, with the additional benefit that it would offer lower rolling resistance than Bonneville's famed salt flats. The record attempt was scheduled for January 1940. As the team prepared to paint the car in Nazi Germany's national colours, replete with eagle motif and swastika, John Cobb was back at Bonneville with the Railton special. In late August 1939, as storm clouds gathered over Europe, Cobb raised the record once again, this time to almost 370 miles per hour. Days later, Hitler's army invaded Poland, resulting in Britain and France declaring war on Germany. The Mercedes team continued to develop their car until mid-October, now targeting a land speed record almost 70 miles per hour higher than at the project's inception 3 years earlier. And then, everything stopped. With the outbreak of war, record-breaking was now far from anyone's mind. A final report on the project was produced, the mighty DB603 engine was removed and returned to the ministry, and the T80 was placed in storage in Kärnten, Austria, for the duration of the war. After the war, the Mercedes-Benz T80 was returned to Stuttgart. Unaware of Germany's land speed project, Allied forces were amazed upon finding Dr. Porsche's futuristic design in the corner of a workshop. Amazement became astonishment when the specifications, projected capabilities and ambitions of the project emerged over the ensuing months. In the spring of 1946, Britain sent a contingent of experts to gather intelligence on the technology behind the T80 and Silver Arrow's Grand Prix cars. The official report that followed has since been published as the book Quicksilver, which has proved extremely useful when researching this video. Among all the technical data in the report is Daimler-Benz's own estimate of the car's top speed, 466 miles per hour. The world land speed record would not exceed this mark for another 18 years. The Mercedes-Benz T80 was exhibited in the company's museum until 1986, when the body and chassis was separated. With the chassis kept in storage, the body, space frame and wheels were exhibited at the new Mercedes-Benz Museum, where they remain on display today. Meanwhile, Mercedes-Benz built a replica body for the T80 out of tubing, enabling the chassis and a cutaway engine to be seen in context. This wireframe outline car was shown at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2018. In 2020, a UK documentary analysed the T80's body shape and concluded that it could have exceeded John Cobb's 1939 record of 369.74 miles per hour. However, the same study also suggested that the aerodynamics of the car's body were flawed and that the car would have flipped at high speed. It seems that the German engineers had inadvertently invented the rear diffuser, which would have provided downforce at the back of the car, while the front lifted. Modern analysis has shown that the Mercedes-Benz T80 was a technical tour de force with fundamental aerodynamic flaws. It may well have been capable of speeds beyond the world land speed record in 1940, but it would have struggled to stay on the ground. In the end, though, the war precipitated by Nazi Germany's ambitions ensured that Hitler's Blackbird would never take flight. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and check out Scarf and Goggles for more tales of record breaking. Click the bell icon and you'll never miss an episode. Until next time.